Hey folks, today's podcast is sponsored by Lear Capital. Visit Lear, LEARSARA.com. That's LearSara.com to learn more about the 24-hour risk-free investor pledge only at Lear Capital. Guys, I have an explosive, exclusive, great interview coming up with Project Veritas founder and CEO and my friend James O'Keefe. I hope you know, maybe all of you know, maybe some of you know, maybe some of you don't know, but James O'Keefe, months ago in September last year, his home was raided by the FBI. O'Keefe is joining me to talk about the shocking story and the mistreatment by the FBI. He's going to go into details. He also has a whistleblower. Listen to this. A whistleblower came forward to James, was just released the information on this, just released that interview, that exclusive interview James has with them. They were an FBI special agent and they are still being paid by the Bureau. That is extraordinary because what this whistleblower, and we're going to have all those clips for you here coming up, what that whistleblower has to say literally is so significant. It is, I believe, one of the greatest crises facing our nation today. It's a constitutional crisis. And James and I will explain why coming up. I'm also going to talk a little bit about what's happening with the baby formula, right? You guys got to stick with us because this is insane. This is insane. Just found out that the government's purchase of baby formula is going to the border. It's going to people that are crossing illegally into the United States. And I'm not saying that babies who come across the border illegally shouldn't have formula. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the Biden administration has opened our border purposefully. We've never seen anything like this. We've got 11,000 to 18,000 people flooding into the country daily. And mothers in the United States cannot get formula for their babies. This, you guys, this is so upside down. Oh, and by the way, we're sending $40 billion to Ukraine. Thank you very much. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't support Ukraine. I'm not saying that Russia is not in the wrong. What I'm saying is what happened to us? What happened to America? What happened to us, right? And that's something that we're going to be talking about on the show. Please follow and subscribe. Get all the links at saracarter.com. You and I both know what's going on here. We have James O'Keefe coming on. He's going to tell you about what happened to him. And it's not just about him. It's about all of us. It's about all of us staying in communication, about the government weaponizing agencies to go after us, the American people, go after journalists, go after priests, go after lawyers. I mean, I'm not joking here, guys. This is serious. The government has expanded its authority to spy where we've never seen it before. And that's why I'm saying if you go to saracarter.com, you link up, get all my social media links right there, and also sign up for our email list. Because if you sign up for the email list, guess what? We can send you an email directly. We can reach out to you directly. We can stay in communication. If I don't have your email, I can't do that because we just don't know what's going to happen. We're keeping our fingers crossed that, you know, Elon Musk is going to go through with the purchase of Twitter. He is already there. But, you know, we've seen over the last few years what can happen. And there can always be a black swan event, a moment where everything changes, where everything shifts. So go to saracarter.com, and sign up for our email list. Guys, I want to tell you about something that I love before I get to James and before I get to the monologue here at the Sara Carter Show. And it's Healthycell. I've been traveling. I'm actually right now in Washington, D.C. I travel quite often for Sean Hannity. I'm usually covering stories all across the country. That requires me to be healthy. I have to get out there. I have to have the energy. I have to stay healthy. And it's not always easy. But the best way to stay healthy is to use Healthycell. That's what I figured out, bar none. It is the best vitamins that you can actually take. And you just ingest them. It's a gel. You don't have to take all these pills. You don't have to bring 20 pills with you. You just take Healthycell. And what's interesting about Healthycell, it just absorbs into your system. It's 165% more absorption than pills, guys. When I'm at the border, I can just slurp up a Healthycell. I'm going to do it on my Instagram is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it out on Instagram so you can see, because I cannot believe how this has changed my life. It has made me feel better. It has made my skin better. It's just made me even their memory recall is incredible. And, you know, instead of having like 20, 50 pills in front of you, you got a couple little packets of gel and you're feeling like $1 million, guys. Healthycell is great tasting. They come in these gel packs. They can fit right into your bag, into your backpack, into your purse. They're effective doses. And there's actually one that it gives you one of the strongest immune supplements on the market. So if you're trying to avoid getting COVID, if you're trying to avoid getting the flu, if you're trying to avoid getting sick, I suggest you try this immune supplement. It's incredible. Journey to better health with Healthycell. Go to healthycell.com/Carter. That's healthycell.com/Carter and use promo code Carter for 20% off your first order. Again, that's healthycell.com/Carter, promo code Carter for 20% off your first order. I want to start with a story that a lot of people aren't really paying attention to, something that I just kind of blew my mind. Now, I've been here in Washington, D.C., mainly to cover I call it the pro-abortion now rallies that are happening here. And there are pro-life folks out there. I can't believe how brave they are. There's like out in front of the Supreme Court every day this week, there have been like a group of 10 that have stood up pro-life, standing up for the unborn, in front of really some unbelievable, incredibly, I'm just going to come out right and say it, grotesque arguments. I had a woman, I've talked about this before, a woman that was saying that she wants abortion to be legal. She should have been aborted. She was a child that grew up in an unwelcome household. The woman's 56 years old, and she's actually been out on some media sites and talking about how she wished her mother could abort her. I mean, this is some of the insanity that I've heard. I spoke to another girl who told me, she was a college student out here, that she believes she has the right to kill her child even up to 9 months. That it's her body. If her child's in her, then she should be able to kill that child even if the baby is 9 months old and healthy. And her life is not even being threatened. She just believes that she has that right. So these are the kind of arguments that are out there. Well, I want you to take a listen to this clip. This is a Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen. She says we need abortion to be widely available because otherwise many women, particularly poor Black women or women of color, won't be able to have fulfilling lives because they're just going to be too poor. Well, my mom was not rich when she had me. And I want you to take a listen to this because Senator Tim Scott, he doesn't buy it at all. In fact, he defends his mother. Listen to this.
I'm just surprised that we find ways to weave into every facet of our lives such an important and painful reality for so many people, to make it sound like it's just another 0.4% added to our labor force participation as a result of the issue of abortion. Just, to me, seems harsh.
Well, I certainly don't mean to say what I think the effects are in a manner that's harsh. What we're talking about is whether or not women will have the ability to regulate their reproductive situation in ways that will enable them to plan lives that are fulfilling and satisfying for them. And one aspect of a satisfying life is being able to feel that you have the financial resources to raise a child, that the children you bring into the world are wanted, and that you have the ability to take care of them. In many cases, abortions are of teenage women, particularly low income and often Black, who aren't in a position to be able to care for children, have unexpected pregnancies, and it deprives them of the ability often to continue their education, to later participate in the workforce. So there is a spillover into labor force participation, but it means that children will grow up in poverty and do worse themselves.
Thank you. Let me just say my time on the topic.
This is the truth.
I'll just simply say that as a guy raised by a Black woman in abject poverty, I'm thankful to be here. as United States Senator.
He's brilliant. Senator Scott is brilliant. And he's right. You know, if the requirement for having a child were to be a millionaire or a wealthy person or somebody in the upper middle class, then the majority of the planet would not exist. What a ridiculous argument. And by the way, what a racist argument. What a racist argument. How many, and she's right, the large majority of abortions now in the United States, the large majority of those that lost their lives before they could even have an opportunity to make a decision for themselves or live a life or smell a flower or run through a field or play with friends or get the warm hug of a mom or, you know, even if they're living in poverty, poverty should not be a qualifier for an abortion, guys. This is ridiculous. This is racist. It's wrong. It's like eugenics. What the heck? How insulting. How insulting. These children and their mothers. I am not taking it away. It's not easy to be a mom. It's not easy to figure out, like, oh my gosh, how you got to feed the kids in the morning. You got to get up, take them to school. You got to deal with a whole new set of issues. You have a person that you are responsible for the rest of their lives, really. Somebody that's connected to you. But it's also the most remarkable thing in the world. It's like women don't even like themselves anymore. I was out there watching these women. They hate men. They hate themselves. They hate the babies. They want to kill the babies. They want to have a party for abortion. I didn't even know what was going on. I felt like I just had landed in some kind of weird hell. And I was sad. I was so broken up. I'm going to tell you why I was broken up. And then we're going to go to James, because this really affected me. I was out there. 3 of the security guys that were with me were from Afghanistan. This week, I got on the phone with somebody who I brought back from Afghanistan. And so we could talk in a 3-way conversation with his brother, who is still in Kabul. I remember I got back to my hotel. It was probably around midnight when I made the call, after just listening to these women just scream about how they want an abortion, about, you better not forget, we're going to have a party for your abortion after this is over. I mean, I just didn't even want to hear it anymore, because even if you have an abortion, it's, for me, I would imagine it would be, and I've never had to experience that, never had to experience that choice. We have 6 kids between me and my husband. You know, I love every single one of them with all of my heart. I've never had to make that decision. So I'm not trying to judge here, but I got to imagine it's got to be gut wrenching. Well, imagine leaving that kind of a protest, right? With people that were really wishing that they had been killed and all that stuff. Going back to your hotel room, getting on a 3-way call with a father in Kabul and his children playing around him, and he's crying because he needs to get out of Kabul because he's terrified that his family will be executed and his children by the Taliban. And all he wants to do is save his children while we're screaming in the streets to kill ours, or at least some people are. Think about that. That was very gut-wrenching for me. That was really difficult for me. I didn't even expect to bring that up right now. Just let me take a moment here. And, before I'm going to get to James O'Keefe, I have, I'm going to just snap right out of it. And I have a great sponsor for this show. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful now to have Lear Capital with us. I think Lear Capital is incredible. I was able to talk to their CEO. I was able to, see what they're about. And I think they're just a great sponsor for this show. And, the Federal Reserve survey broke some really bad news, guys, dating back to the 1950s. Whenever inflation and unemployment have hit today's levels, history suggests a recession may be near. And that's based on fact. Remember what the last recession did to your retirement? I mean, I do. I remember we were going through in 2008. It was terrifying. I mean, we were watching our portfolios dip. People were losing everything. Some people even lost their homes. My friends at Lear Capital shared how investing in physical gold and precious metals can be a brilliant strategy against what's coming. This is important. Smart investors are buying gold and precious metals now for two reasons. One, gold can be a great hedge during a recession. And two, the closer a recession gets, the more your gold could be worth. Don't let your retirement take a hit like '08. Talk with my team at Lear Capital. Talk with them about owning precious metals for your savings and retirement accounts. Believe me, you're not going to regret it. Right now, you'll receive up to $10,000 in free bonus coins based on the value of gold coins you purchase. Visit LearSara.com. That's LearSara.com. Lear, L-E-A-R, Sara, S-A-R-A.com. Without any further delay, I've got James O'Keefe. He's the founder and president of Project Veritas. I want to tell you, through his undercover reporting, they have broken incredible stories. Well, they've done it again. Project Veritas has exposed corruption at Acorn. You remember that. Admissions of major political bias at NPR, CNN, social media sites, and so much more. But just a few months ago, James became the story when the FBI raided his home. This is a journalist, raided his home in the middle of the night, and he is here to discuss that story and what he's recently uncovered about the FBI targeting the news media. And more importantly, there is an FBI special agent that came forward. Of course, he is not giving his identity, came forward to Project Veritas because he and other special agents within the FBI are concerned about the direction their agency, I've been saying this for more than 5 years now. We saw what happened with President Trump, but specifically targeting journalists and how the agency, the FBI, has been weaponized against what used to be sacred institutions. Here's an excerpt of James interviewing this FBI whistleblower. I want you to take a listen.
So you've been a special agent for a number of years.
Correct.
Special agent with the FBI.
That's correct.
And you're still being paid for that role.
Yes. There's a number of very troubling things that are happening within the FBI.
What brought you to Project Veritas?
Project Veritas appears to be a victim of political undertakings, which is where this agency has gone.
You came across some information.
The file that you're talking about is background on the Project Veritas investigation that resulted in the search warrant at your premises. We don't see a lot of investigations into news organizations. It's not common to see a criminal investigation, particularly one categorized the way that this is alerting, and it's surprising based on the public information that is provided.
I got to tell you, I was stunned when that happened to James. I've known James for a long time. In fact, a lot of people here that work at Radio America have known James for a long time. This is absolutely incredible. Something that you would hear about happening in other countries, in Russia, for example, Vladimir Putin, and other places around the world. You would never, ever think that this would happen in the United States of America. Here's a little bit more of their conversation. I want you to hear between this FBI special agent that is undercover, that is in disguise. We don't know who this person is, but a little bit more of that conversation between them and James O'Keefe.
So SIM is a classification that means it's a sensitive investigative matter. Because it's sensitive, it could be a political figure, it could be a news media organization.
Who makes the classification that we're news media?
It would usually be identified as by the case agents who are working it, and it's also done in conjunction with the chief division counsel of that field office, who's going to be the top internal lawyer. That title would normally be the name of the subject, the name of the victim, the name of the type of crime that is being alleged, if these things exist. In this case, it's restricted because even the name of the subject would indicate the nature of what was going on.
You know what, folks, the most concerning part I'm looking for, if you see me looking down, you're watching the video, it's because I'm actually looking for something here in my notes about stories that I had written in the past with John Solomon that are very concerning and lead right to this. But the most concerning part about this is that the FBI doesn't even need to accuse you of doing something wrong to turn your life upside down and basically destroy it. Right? If they want information from you, they can just do it. And this is not just about the FBI and the tentacles moving across our country being able to access our information both on the internet as well as in our phone records, but actually entering your home, shaking you down, taking all of your computer data, taking all of your hard drives, basically poking into journalism. I'm going to talk about this. I want you to hear this really quick. This is another little clip about that, because for me as a journalist, and especially when I was working on big stories, this means that the FBI, if they take all of your stuff, they're going to know who all of your resources are, who all of your sources are, what you're doing, every aspect of your work. This is supposed to be sacred, and it's sacred in a democracy and a republic. And when that is violated, it is over. I want you to listen to this.
CAST is an internal program in the FBI that uses sophisticated techniques to exploit cell phone data for location and for content.
Going down to sentinel tags.
This was chosen by the people who opened up this case. They had to specifically list the threat tags that they wanted to identify. The intelligence investigation is meant for information. That doesn't require that you've done anything wrong. The dialogue, that's the governing dynamic for the FBI.
One paragraph justification for spying on anyone?
It's one of the few parts of the entire public document that you see that will be redacted. It's truly an incredible amount of power if used wrong.
I've been saying this for a very, very long time. I've been warning about this, and I know I talked about it at the top of my monologue, particularly the story that I felt was one of the most important stories that John Solomon and I broke was the documents relating to the Obama administration's admission that during the time of the Obama administration, right before Obama left office, they told the FISA court that they had expanded the government's capability. Listen to this, the government's capability to spy on not just journalists, but lawyers, actually breaking attorney-client privilege, priests, rabbis, you name it. And by the way, even doctors and therapists. I want you to think about the power of the government here. While we may be not paying attention to it, but what does this mean to us? When our government has access into every single part of our lives, when we can be intimidated, when we can be blackmailed. It's not just about journalists, guys. Imagine what happens when the government is actively investigating lawmakers too. The CIA doesn't get what it wants in its budget. Guess what? I got a ton of information on so-and-so. What happens when they have the same access to judges and their information? You think this is about all doing the right thing? This is about politicizing information to get what they want, and they being the people that are in power. I don't want Biden to have that kind of power. I don't want President Trump to have that kind of power. I don't want any future president or its administration to have that kind of power. And that's why we have James on the show with us today. James, I am so grateful to have you here on the Sara Carter Show. One, because I've always respected your work. I think you are incredible. I think if we didn't have you, we wouldn't know half of what was happening in our country and with our government. But what's happened to you recently, and with the fact that the FBI raided your home, seized all of your equipment, you're a journalist, and took everything. And I think it must have been terrifying, James. It must have been terrifying what you went through. First, I want to go through that. I mean, we've played all of the clips at the top of the show. I want you to go through with our audience what happened to you the night that the FBI raided your home.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And yes, just to preface this is probably the story that most journalists want to break their entire careers. I've been trying to break this FBI whistleblower story for years. You have to get a source to trust you enough to come to you. And this is someone currently paid by the Bureau, special agent. This is pretty extraordinary that we've reached a point in our country where people are pushed so far they have to do stuff like this. Of course, this is the paragon of journalism. And this comes on the heels of the raid about 6 months ago at my apartment. You probably have all heard the story of the FBI raids against Project Veritas journalists over a abandoned diary. First of all, the FBI doesn't even appear to have jurisdiction in those matters. But it was the daughter of the president, and it was a couple weeks before the election. So this happens. They come to my home at 6 a.m., with guns and just like you see in the movies, they with a battering ram, Sarah, a battering ram at my door. And it was kind of just a surreal thing. It was obviously terrifying. It was not my first rodeo. I've been targeted before, but not like this, not with the execution of a search warrant signed by a magistrate judge in New York, the Southern District of New York, proverbially referred to as the Sovereign District of New York because they kind of go rogue sometimes. But what's interesting, and that was terrifying, but what's interesting this week is that a source inside the Bureau obtained the internal restricted computer page discussing our case. And Sarah, in that document, they referred to Project Veritas as news media. That's an extraordinary thing, and here's why. Because the United States attorneys, the prosecutors who issued these warrants, they explicitly said that we were not journalists in their pleadings before the court. And now it comes out the FBI is calling us journalists. And the reason why that matters, Sarah, is because the law of the United States says that if you're going to execute a search warrant against a reporter, an investigative reporter, you can first of all, you can't do that. There are certain rules and laws. You have to get permission from the Attorney General. They just broke all the rules and all the laws. And now we have the smoking gun.
That's it. You have the smoking gun. And I was talking at the top of the show, James, before you came on. It was a story that John Solomon and I broke back in 2017. Andrew McCarthy made a big deal about it. It was, it's still up there on National Review. And it was about NSA illegal surveillance. And this was dealing with a document that was actually declassified. And it was from the FISA court. In April 26, 2017, it was declassified. And it dealt with the Obama administration. And I was explaining to all the listeners there, just so they could get an idea of what you've been going through, but how the Obama administration had expanded its ability to basically, without the appropriate warrants that we're normally used to, use the NSA and the FBI for surveillance on journalists, on priests, on lawyers, on doctors, and they were chided by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and basically said this raises serious Fourth Amendment issues. Well, not only does it raise serious Fourth Amendment issues, and I want to get your take on this, James, but they have access to all of your sources in those computers, in those hard drives, in your notes. They have access to everything, all your work, everything that you've done. Is that concerning to you?
Yeah, it's a constitutional crisis, Sarah. I mean, it's insane. I mean, I know I've been saying this to a lot of people. It's hard to shock people anymore. Everyone's sort of like, they shrug their shoulders. Oh, yeah, we know they're spying. Like, it's not shocking to even the people listening to this program probably right now. Like, yes, I already know the FBI spies on everyone. No, this is actually a new bridge they've crossed because they're doing it to a journalist. I know they did it to Roger Stone. I know FBI targets parents in Colorado, and that's horrific. But this is actually even worse. And the reason why is because, first of all, people will say, well, James O'Keefe is not a journalist, right? You hear that from people on the left. Project Veritas is not a media organization. But they're calling us journalists. And when you go after journalists, just because you don't like them or like what they're doing or like what stories they're reporting on, or in the worst case, they're acting as the Praetorian Guard for Biden, that really is banana republic level stuff. We've basically reached North Korea, Russia level shenanigans. And the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law against the press. So I testified before Congress members this week about this very issue. And the problem is if you issue a warrant against a journalist using what they call probable cause, you have probable cause, that standard, once you come into my apartment with a battering ram and take my stuff and take my emails and take my notebooks, there's no constitutional remedy. At that point, the constitutional violation is too great. There's no amount of money. There's no amount of, I could sue them, and perhaps I will. Mm-hmm. That's going to come in the future. But that won't matter anymore because they've already taken my reporters' notebooks with private confidential information in them. And that's why Congress needs to reform and it can't just be probable cause. It has to be a clear and convincing standard. You can't execute a search warrant, obviously, against a journalist and then seal what is in the affidavit. We need to know what evidence they have. Anytime they're ever going to do this, they have to air the evidence. But there is no evidence because the diary wasn't even stolen, not even by the source. Even if it was stolen by the source, I didn't steal it, and a journalist has a right to receive leaked information. So this is, this is just I know that people sort of eyes glaze over. They hear about the spying. This is a constitutional crisis in this country because there's nowhere else for sources to go except places like Project Veritas, and they're targeting us.
That's exactly where I was going to go with this. And I hope people's eyes are not glazing over, James, because this is a constitutional crisis and it could break our republic. It could break our democracy if it's not fixed. And the fact that it happened to Project Veritas should send shockwaves through every single institution of journalism, whether that's the New York Times or the Washington Times, whether that is, MSNBC or DNC, as Sean Hannity likes to call it, or, or Fox or anyone. Everybody should be stunned because, as you rightfully pointed out in those documents, it actually stipulates that you are a news organization. And I want people to be aware of what's happening here and the political ramifications of this as well. Remember when under Obama, James Rosen was targeted? And they said that they were trying to see if James Rosen, who his sources were on North Korea, and we all know that was BS. They were trying to see what was going on with the Hillary Clinton investigation and all of the other extenuating circumstances. But they were not only spying on James Rosen, they actually had tapped into his parents' phone line as well. They actually extended that spying to the AP. So we're seeing it become even more and more egregious. This isn't you, I think, brilliantly have a place where sources feel safe, right? And that's why they have come to you, because they feel like, okay, I'm in the government, I can talk to James, but he's not gonna screw me over. He's gonna stand up to me. He has the resources to back me in a court fight. But what happens now? What happens now when government sources want to go to someone to tell them about something horrible, to be a watchdog on their own agencies or government? What do they do now when the government basically just walks in, like Russia, like North Korea, like Pakistan, like other countries in the world, and just seizes everybody's information?
Well, that's why this is kind of a circular constitutional crisis, because the people are always going to say, and I'm sure your audience says this to you, nothing ever happens to these people, James.
Right.
No one's ever held accountable, right? You hear that all the time. Nothing ever happens to the FBI. Well, first of all, the accountability that you seek is sunlight. The accountability that you seek, the founding fathers created a very interesting system where the First Amendment affords people to get the information so that they can make informed decisions. And I still believe that the American people, by and large, if they get the information, they're smart enough to change their minds and vote the right way. That it all depends upon what you just said, sources coming to journalists. So this has never happened before. And here is some good news. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberty Union, has come to my defense. Their lawyers were in my office last week. And there'll be more news on that. The Reporters Committee, these are not right-wingers. These are like Wolf Blitzer and Andrea Mitchell and NBC News and Josh Gerstein. They're coming to my defense, and they're asking to unseal these affidavits. So I have managed to find the one issue that there still is some consensus on. You don't raid journalists' homes and take their notebooks just because you don't like them. That's just not something that happens on American soil. That's really bad.
Well, yeah, and it's not just that they don't like you. Okay, we get it. They don't like you. The administration doesn't like James O'Keefe, doesn't like Project Veritas, this administration. That's not the point. The point is they wanted to be able to find out who your sources are, what the information you have is, what do you have in your hard drives, who you've been talking to. That's what I believe they wanted. It wasn't so much about, I'm gonna get James O'Keefe back. It's gonna be like, I'm not only gonna get him back, but I want to get every bit of information. And to me, that's criminal. That goes against everything.
If they did that to the New York Times granted, the New York Times national security reporters work in tandem with their source. They don't investigate. They act as the ombudsman for the administrative state. But if they did that to New York Times or, NBC News or CBS News, there'd be riots in the streets.
Right.
And I think that, and the press needs to we need to be aligned on it. We're working together on this. I'm not against the press. These are principles. And the ACLU told me, Sarah, in my office last week, the lawyers in my office, and I said, has that ever happened before? And I said, what happened to you has never happened in American history. The FBI has never actually executed a search warrant against a press media organization like this. It has never happened before in American history. Now, they have issued subpoenas to third-party vendors, like with the New York Times under Trump. The DOJ issued a subpoena for Google, but they didn't gag them from talking about it. So Google went to the New York Times, which was the email provider, and protested the subpoena. In my case, what happened was they gagged Microsoft from telling anybody that they were issued secret warrants. So these are kind of uncharted waters, and there are principles, not ideological principles. It's not right wing or left wing. There's no ideology here. It's about principles, and I think that we're going to be tested here, because if we can't agree on this, Sarah, if we can't agree, I'm talking about the press, the New York, all the people that like to hate on me because they prefer I not investigate their sacred cows, right? Planned Parenthood. Don't look into Planned Parenthood. But if we can't agree on the principles on this, then I don't know. There's no way we can save the country, because those are so fundamental. And I think that we do agree on these things. And I think that, Gerstein and ACLU and other left-wing organizations are actually going to come to our defense on this.
I absolutely believe that as well. I see the glass as half full when it comes to the people that are coming to your defense, and particularly the ACLU. And I'm grateful for that. Because that's an even playing field. If they had turned their back on you, I would be much more concerned. I think what's interesting, though, is that despite all of that, what's so explosive and extraordinary is that you get this whistleblower, right? You have someone, and I know how difficult it is. Usually we have retired, whistleblowers with the FBI, with the Bureau, just because there's a lot of concern. There's a different process that people with high security clearances go through when they're dealing with the media and when they're dealing with the public. And some of that has to do with polys and having to go in and take a poly, and they don't want to be caught up in that. Although, James Comey and I guess James Baker and a bunch of the other guys like Andy McCabe, they didn't worry so much about that until they got caught. But it's very rare that somebody from the Bureau will say, you know what, enough's enough, I'm coming forward. And that's what happened with you.
Yeah, it's if you listen to the interview, I hope everyone does, it's very, very powerful. He makes this comment, which I thought was very profound. This is, again, an insider working for the FBI, currently paid by the FBI. And I've disguised his voice, and you heard some of those clips. He said to me, it's not so much that I'm against people who believe in what they're doing. Some of these agents in my apartment perhaps might believe in what they're doing. He says, it's more the people that don't believe in what they're doing and do it anyway because they're following orders. And he says, for their paycheck and their pension. And then he says, paycheck and the pension, that mentality is the sort of thing that might lead to the Holocaust. It was very profound. He said they bring them to the Holocaust Museum during training at the FBI. They bring them to the Martin Luther King Memorial to try to embed these values in them. And this is what Project Veritas stands for. We're trying to get people on the inside to follow their conscience and to blow the whistle. And there really is nowhere else for them to go. I mean, some haters on Twitter right now are writing the following. They're saying, well, no leaker from the FBI would ever just put stuff on YouTube. And it's kind of funny because where can they go? Can they go to CNN? Can they go to the national security reporters at the New York Times with this information? No. There's nowhere for these whistleblowers to actually go. And I think that this person was pushed so far that they decided to take a chance and take a risk.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm very familiar with sources and how sources operate. And when I, covered the war in Afghanistan or Iraq, or even here in the United States, covering the Trump campaign and what was happening with President Trump after he was elected, it is very difficult for people to come forward. But they usually do because of it's a conscious decision in many cases. Sometimes it's retribution. They're trying to get back at someone. They want to get something out there. But for the most part, when you're dealing with people in law enforcement and in the FBI or in the CIA or in the military, a lot of it has to do with how they consciously feel about something. And what the left isn't understanding now, and I say the left, I don't say just Democrats, Republicans. I think there's a different ideology, a different kind of something happening in our country now, James, something kind of scary for me and scary for so many people, but is this idea that, before we would question everything. Now there are people who just want to believe everything that these agencies or our government says to us, carte blanche, without even questioning it. And I think for this whistleblower, you're absolutely right. It was brilliant. He made a move to say, hey, I came to you. And I loved in the interview where, you ask him that and he says it's because they targeted you, because he knew in his own mind that what they were doing was wrong. I want to ask you about that night. What was the feeling, or that morning when they came in and, they stormed your home? I can't even imagine, busting down the door like that. But what were their faces looking like? What was it like in there?
Well, first of all, on this file, this document the source gave us, it lists the names of the agents in my apartment. Unbelievable. It's a restricted document. It's so restricted because it's news media, sensitive investigative matters. So
right.
there are very few people who have access to this document, right? So I'm not going to say what I'm thinking, but I think you know what I'm thinking. It follows logically that there are some people involved in this who are not happy. And I looked at the faces of the agents. First of all, they banged on the door at 6 a.m. I was asleep. It woke me up. It startled me. I ran to the door because I knew it was likely the feds. The reason I knew that is because my colleagues had been raided 2 days prior, so it logically followed that they were there for me.
Right.
And the first thing that went through my mind was, honestly, I was, I'm kind of in a stupor at 6 a.m. I'm not a morning person. So I was most worried about they're going to break down my door. And then I have to replace the locks. That's actually what was going through my head. I have to deal with this door being busted. So I opened the door before they busted it down. And of course, you might be thinking, well, aren't you afraid they're going to shoot you? Yes. You reach for something, or you put your hand in your pocket, and they might kill you. And the first thing they did when I opened the door, there was a lot of flashlights in my face, big bright lights, sort of something like out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and they threw me against the wall, and they put me in handcuffs. And my first thought was, I'm under arrest. This is going to get really bad. And then they put me in the hallway, and eventually they told me that I'm not under arrest, that this is a search warrant, and they showed me the warrant signed by a magistrate judge, and it listed the following crimes. It listed transportation of stolen material across state lines, transportation of stolen documents across state lines, which is a crime so absurd, Sarah, that they would have to incarcerate every journalist ever.
Right. They were reaching. It's like they were reaching for whatever they could.
Yeah. It would never hold up in court. There's never going to be an indictment. It's just a Kafkaesque absurdity. And all these things are going through your mind. You're in handcuffs, Indian style, on your couch as these agents are, raiding your home. And it's kind of like a psychological rape. And then after they left, you're in this sort of state of, I guess, you're sort of numb. And then the next night, I couldn't sleep. It was sort of like, trauma, just an acute sense of trauma, and that they're going to come back. And you wonder, because they've already crossed that Rubicon, what other Rubicons are they going to cross? Everything you thought about the country that you love, you pledge allegiance as a kid in grade school to the flag, it's all just a wash. You're thinking, I can't believe they can do this on American soil to journalists. And if they are willing to do this for their paycheck and their pension, what other things are they going to do? And that's the fear, and that's the trauma. And after a couple of days, it goes away for me, and you're stronger as a result of it.
You know, you are very strong. And I love the way that you described it, though, in the beginning as psychological rape, because it is a trauma. It is a trauma. It's like PTSD later. You know, you don't know what's going to happen. And the reason I say that is because we've seen overtly what's happened to you. And as you were talking to me, James, you know what went through my mind? What do we not know? What do we not know? Because look how far they went overtly to you to try to intimidate you, to try to take your information. And then it occurs to me, as we've seen in many of the reports, we've seen IG reports during the Trump admin, we've seen what happened to others. I remember with the ambassador from Ukraine, asking the State Department to watch people's social media, and using taxpayer dollars to basically track my social media, Seb Gorka's social media, Sean Hannity's social media, Laura Ingram's social media, So now I'm thinking to myself, and I hope this case against the government actually unravels some of this. But how far has our government gone into spying on journalists? I mean, they don't always have to be overt about it, right?
Well, then, according to the whistleblower in our story, he brings up this SIM. So on the secret document, it says SIM, which is sensitive investigative matter. And according to unclassified documents that inside the FBI, it shows that 11% of the SIMs are against news media. And some lefties today, there was a woman named Laura Jadid, who is a contributor to Rolling Stone. She tweeted this in response to our story. She said, quote, "I care about FBI overreach 1,000 times more than a stolen diary. If you think this isn't happening to left-wing journalists, you're out of your mind." I mean, think of it. It logically follows that the FBI is doing this to a whole bunch of people. They may not be executing search warrants, but they're certainly launching investigations. And in this classified or this restricted document that was given to us by the source, it lists a variety of techniques they use. It says they do pen registers. They do this thing called CAST, where they geolocate your phones, and they're able to go right for your phone data and triangulate this information. And they're doing it because of the way that you can investigate anyone for anything. And there's no accountability, Sarah. The Republicans, God love them, but it's almost like they're afraid of the FBI too, because if they hold hearings or investigate them, they'll be retaliated. Everyone's afraid they're going to be retaliated against. Everyone's afraid they're going to be raided. So they just go along to get along. And that's not really the Madisonian concept of the Bill of Rights or the First Amendment or our founding, really, isn't it? So I think that the critical thing for us to do, as you and I and others that are out there, regardless of your politics, is don't be afraid. Just do. We're trying to set the example by interviewing people within the Bureau and kind of counterintuitively, they've chilled out some of our sources, but a whole bunch more are coming to us because they like that we're willing to not back down.
I hope more sources continue to come forward. I know there are people that listen to my show that work with the FBI, listen to this podcast, obviously follow all your stories. I hope that for those of you that are listening, if you have information, that you take it to James O'Keefe, you take it to Project Veritas. It will be safe there, because right now, if we don't stand up to what's happening in our government, and you're right, it's like you said, state of fear. I think that's exactly what's happening right now across the board with our lawmakers, regardless of which side. It was funny. I was thinking about this the other day, James, it used to be it was Frank Church, a Democrat, with the church hearings, that was chiding the NSC for spying on Americans. This is back in the 1960s, and now nobody's standing up. Nobody's doing their job. Before I let you go, I want to ask you about this. You've spent a lot of time exposing all the far left bias of social media companies. Now, the left's in a total panic over Elon Musk. He's about to take over Twitter. He's been making a lot of statements. What's your reaction to Musk, and what would you like to see him focus on?
That's quite a question. Everyone's talking about that, and I'm not sure I have any additional opinions. I saw that 2 Twitter leaders are leaving after Musk's deal to buy the company. There's a shakeup of executives. But what I will say is that I don't agree with people on the right that, they want to create alternative platforms. I think it's important for create alternative platforms, but don't just only go on those platforms. I think we need to have a presence on the proverbial town square. We need to be on Twitter. We need to be on Facebook. We need to be on all these things. And I also think that Veritas we've released some tapes inside Twitter of their all hands call when they were complaining about Musk. Well, this is really our beat. We have another story coming out next week. More Twitter officials, they put out a statement. This is inside Twitter, warning people not to talk to Project Veritas. Well, that warning fell upon deaf ears because we have many more tapes coming out. And those tapes will give you an inside view of the culture, of how they conduct their algorithms and of their political philosophy and their ideology. They really place ideology over free expression. And it's important for them to be transparent about what the ideology is, because they are a private company, but transparency is important.
Yeah, it's important for us to know what's going on, and I'm grateful for those whistleblowers at Project Veritas and for you. I mean, I'm excited about next week, excited to see what you guys have coming. And I want you to hear this clip. I'm gonna end here because I think, and I'm gonna give you a chance to wrap it up, but I want you to hear this clip because I think this goes right to what is happening with you, with Project Veritas, with the frustration that so many FBI special agents are feeling right now in targeting American citizens, journalists, and in allowing, I guess, their agency to be weaponized against the American people. The Biden administration is now creating this disinformation governance board, and Senator Rand Paul just shredded the idea while he was talking to Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas this week. I think this is such a significant moment. Listen to this.
Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media? I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
That was brilliant. What are your thoughts on that?
Self-evident. I don't have any. I think the government has no place in this, and probably people inside the DHS, if you're listening to this program, send me a note, veritastips@protonmail.com. We need good people. We need people to be brave, do something, and blow the whistle. Sarah, I got to run because I'm overlapping my next thing I got to do, but I appreciate you having me on so much.
Anytime, James. You're amazing. You're a great American and a true patriot. I'm behind you all the way in this fight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You all know how I feel about MyPillow. I love MyPillow products. I love the fact that MyPillow, right, is made here in the United States. And of course, more than anything, it's its founder, its CEO, MyPillow, Mike Lindell. Everybody knows Mike Lindell. We see him all the time, right, on advertisements. But he's a great American and a great patriot, and he really cares about it. I have MyPillow all over my house. I've got dog bed MyPillows. I've got MyPillow sheets. I've got MyPillow slippers. I love, love, love this company, and I know that you will too. And I have a really big special. Thank you, Mike. It's called the BOGO Extravaganza, and we've got everything for you. We got MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $59.98. Elegance MyPillows as low as $49.98. Roll and go anywhere MyPillows. How awesome is that? $29.98. And I'm telling you, those roll and go anywhere MyPillows are awesome, especially if you're always on the run. Listen to me. The roll and go anywhere MyPillow, you can use it on your couch, on your recliner, or like me when I go to the border and I'm staying at different hotels. It's versatile enough even to take on your vacations, and you should take it. Who wants to lay on someone else's pillow? You're sticking your face right on it. That's gross, right? Well, it is, especially if you're in hotels that are a little sketchy. So you want to take the MyPillow with you everywhere you go. I know Mike Lindell, he was thinking ahead, right? He's thinking ahead for all of us. It's available in multiple colors and patterns, machine washable and dryable. And what about your college students? They will absolutely love this. It has a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Guys, we got to do it. It's a buy one, get one extravaganza at mypillow.com/Carter. Bed sheets, MyPillows are just the tip of the iceberg. Find the full list of BOGO off visiting mypillow.com/Carter or call 1-800-685-7221. I love saying it fast. That's 1-800-685-7221. Stock up with buy one, get one free savings today and get Mike's book free with any purchase at mypillow.com/Carter or call 1-800-685-7221, mypillow.com/Carter. I promise you a big story. So listen to this. We'll take a quick break. And when I come back, we're going to talk about where all the baby milk is going, right? Where is all of our baby milk going? Did you know this? While millions of moms around the states are desperately looking for baby formula, I know this because my daughter and her friends are talking about it all the time on Facebook and on Instagram. Poor Sophia, hearing from her friends all the time, there's no baby formula, there's no baby milk. People are just freaking out, right? The Biden admin is actually sending that formula on pallets to the border. So while American women here in the United States cannot get milk for their babies, the government has purchased all of the milk it can possibly purchase. It's not handing it out to the American gals. It's not handing it out to us, not handing it out to our daughters. It's handing it out at the border in a crisis that they created. And like I said at the top of the show, this is not about not giving babies who are coming across the border milk. So anybody out there who thinks that I'm being insensitive or unkind, that's not it at all. That crisis, that humanitarian crisis, the enormous amount of people that are crossing that border, that tsunami that is constantly growing, is a crisis that the Biden administration wanted. It's one that they created themselves. And I think it's stunning that what we're seeing right now and that it's going to the border. I want to talk to you a little bit about what's happening with that milk. We have a supply chain issue. We have issues where there's factory actually that right now is unable to make the milk. A lot of the milk was recalled. And we also have the issue that the government's buying up all the milk. I actually feel like there's something else going on here because I've never seen this happen before. Or this is just like that perfect storm, right? Like a perfect storm situation that just happened with baby milk. But it made me think about everything else, how this is a serious national security issue on multiple levels. And it's not just because of the baby milk. I want you to think about all of the supplies we get from China. We still get the majority of our antibiotics from China. So if something happens and the Chinese want to cut us off, guess what? We are screwed. Right? Most of our important military equipment, what we will need in order to gear up our military for war, guess where it comes from? It comes from China. It's not made here in the United States. So basically, we're going to have to ask the Chinese permission and to send us our equipment if we ever want to go to war with them. And now we're missing, baby formula. We did not see this happen under Trump. And frankly, we never saw this happen under Obama. this administration or President Bush, this administration is a complete and utter disaster. And folks, I would love to hear from you. I want to hear how you're feeling, how you're handling this economy. Stock market's crashing. We're all just so worried. And oh my gosh, it's only the first year. How much more damage can he do in the next 3 years? Please write me. Please let me know. Please ping me on Twitter. Please ping me on all of my social media. Let me know how you're feeling, and I'll read about it here on the show, right? I couldn't have asked for a better guest than James O'Keefe. I hope he opened up your minds to realize what a predicament we are in our nation. And I hope that even if you only take 10 minutes today, or even 5 minutes, pick up the phone and call your lawmaker. Tell them that this is unacceptable. Tell them that you are not going to stand for this because, frankly, our Constitution and our principles will not stand for this. And if you're with the FBI, if you're with the DEA, if you're with the Department of Homeland Security, if you're with any agency out there and you're listening to the show and you know there is wrongdoing going on inside your agency and you want to speak out, go to James O'Keefe with Project Veritas. Contact me. Let me know. Let me know what you're thinking. I'll get you to the right people. We should not live in a country where we are so afraid to do the right thing that we end up doing the wrong thing. And that's why you should listen to that entire interview with James O'Keefe and the FBI whistleblower, because it's the truth. It's frightening, but it teaches us a lesson. It grounds us again. Stand up for what's right. Stand up for your principles. God bless you. God bless this great nation. And I'll see you next week.